formal.
Okay, and I can just say no comment at any point.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
sure.
But
we can edit
it'll
too.
we can edit, but if you say no comment,
That's staying in.
it might
gonna
just
go
stay
deeper.
in.
Fair enough.
And I feel like when you say no comment, it's just one of those things where we're just like, all right, they're hiding something there.
I have nothing to hide.
You can plead the fifth.
Yeah. Well, she's not being interrogated, so.
I do feel like I need to clear my name though because I didn't rig that bike raffle.
Yeah.
I'm stopped the steal on this. I think there's some like shady. We need a recount.
Hey, if you say it was Ann, I believe it was Ann.
Yeah.
I don't really. Either way, I'm just grateful that I had that bike. It was fantastic. I rode it around a lot.
I
It was a
remember
cool
being
bike.
very jealous of you when you got that bike. It was a nice bike. New Belgium does good swag.
We're singing profitability in my old Kentucky home.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Kentucky Commons Radio Hour. I am Michael Moeller, joined by John Renane. David Satterley is not in with us tonight. We are at Brewgrass Homebrew Supply on a rainy Wednesday night, so that might come into the mic a little bit, but that's okay. If you are interested in seeing what we're doing here tonight, just check out the new YouTube page, youtube.com/@Louisville Ale Trail. I believe that little @ symbol is part of the URL. And if you feel like tipping us a couple bucks, you can do so at patreon.com/KYCommons. Every little bit helps, but otherwise just feel free to like, share, listen, send a review in, do whatever you can to help spread the love. If you're listening to this, it means that you must like it on some level. So feel free to share it with some friends. We are joined tonight by one special guest. If you are a listener of the show, you've heard her name a couple times recently on the Todd Ferris Liquor Barn episode. Brittney Donohue, Area Manager of Kentucky and Southern Ohio for New Belgium. Brittney, thank you for coming on.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've known each other for a few years now. I'm ashamed that you're just now coming onto this podcast for the first time, but
I'm ashamed that I just listened to my first episode in the last few weeks. So, and
That's
I did
how we
listen
grow
to
our audience, like-
the pregame coffee episode too.
Uh-huh.
That's a cool shop.
oh,
I need to
pregame.
go in there more.
Love pregame. Yeah, you live right down the road from there. Not to give
Yeah.
where you live. Away,
Yeah, I'm
but
not going to
you're
give
in-
my address. No.
No, we don't want to know that.
Within a 2-mile radius.
Absolutely. Well, before we get too much into the meat of New Belgium and like present day things, can you just give a quick little overview of who you are and how you got into this world?
Oh,
When a man and a woman really love each other. It's like,
yes, it was a dark and stormy night. They were at the Toy Tiger, I think.
yes.
Oh.
That was another Todd Ferris episode
Yeah,
reference.
I did mention it. Yeah, I was born in Louisville and spent my life kind of bouncing around between Louisville and Chicago. And I got a love for craft beer really young, 21, of course.
Of course.
I was one of my first restaurant gigs was at O'Shea's here in town, and that was the first time that I discovered that there was something besides Miller Lite and Jaeger bombs. Although
That's awesome.
they sell a lot of Miller Lite and Jaeger bombs at O'Shea's, and
To
still
this day.
probably
Yeah.
do right now. But I had a Chimay, and it just kind of knocked my socks off. And they had the Beer Around the World program, which was really, really cool. And so then I moved to Chicago and got into the fine dining scene and started playing around with craft beer pairings at the restaurant I was at that was doing wine pairing. And then made friends with the guys from Three Floyds. Next thing I knew, I was back in Louisville working for Beer House Distributors. And then I started stalking New Belgium. I knew that they were coming to Kentucky, and I knew that was who I wanted to work for. So,
Well, it's funny, we always start off the show with a beer to share, and so I had already gotten wind of a I guess a beer that means a lot to you and in your history. So I did want to go ahead and bring some Grand Reserve in. If you want to talk us through this beer, though, as I pour it, that way you can kind of tell us what your initial experiences were with it, or what it means to you today. When was the last time you had it, for example? Because like I know that beers like this aren't necessarily in like the cool hip menus anymore, but it means a lot to a lot of different people.
I know, it's so sad. This, like I said, this beer absolutely knocked my socks off when I was 21 years old. I didn't know that beer could have so much flavor.
Oh yeah,
should have done that by the mic.
I think it's close enough. That was a good pop.
They heard it. When was the last time you all had a Chimay?
I feel like we drank some Chimay when Liz Vale was on.
I want to say that was probably it, because she brought in
a little less than a year ago.
As we tell all of our guests, hey, bring in a beer that you love, and she brought in like 12.
Yeah,
and she was like, I just want to walk you all through my beer journey. And
Chimay,
she brought in like
Delirium
12.
Tremens.
Yeah, she brought in like 12 Belgian beers. And I was like, oh, that's great. I haven't had any Chimay period in a long time. I'm actually feeling a little nostalgic because I got a little Facebook notification today that it's been 4 years today since I went to Brussels.
Oh, wow.
And I remember a very fun trip to Chimay during that trip.
I have not been to Chimay, but I have been to Belgium, and I hope to go back again soon. I was on the last at New Belgium on your 5-year anniversary. You get to go to Belgium,
Old Belgium,
pretty cool. Old Belgium,
yeah.
yes, very funny. They don't get that joke in Belgium. Let me just tell you, they don't know what New Belgium is. They don't care.
So as we sip on this,
thank you, sir.
Brittney, can you tell us a little bit about that? The fine dining experience of pairing food with beer instead of wine, which was kind of maybe foreign to a lot of people at the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think people always kind of waxed and waned about how glorious wine is, and I do love wine, but there's so many different flavor profiles that come from the grapes and the regions and the terroir and all of that. And I think at the time that I was getting into it, and this was, 15, 20 years ago, I don't think people in the US at least really saw that those attributes were all a part of beer as well. And so really being able to do like pairing menus and let people, not have to commit to a full, $7.50 or a big bomber of a specialty beer, which is what a lot of those were in at the time. Letting them taste it and kind of talk through it and see the flavors of like raisin or banana and clove, or talking about the different carbonation and the yeast. And there's so many things.
The yeast is one of the most interesting things that's, I think, makes beer. I like wine too. I just, I love beer, but you don't get exactly the same level of yeast expression in wine. You get a little bit, but not anywhere close to what it is in the beer world. Like, that's super fun.
Oh, totally.
And Chimay is the perfect example of just, because that's not a very complicated beer to brew. It's, people these days are doing all crazy stuff with purees and new malts and very simple, traditional, but it's that 500, 800,000-year-old yeast that makes the difference. So how does that inform what kind of food you would pair it with?
Gosh, I think, something that has a really tight bubble in the yeast can cut through a lot of really fatty dishes, and kind of find ways to balance that, and kind of the way that it kind of tickles your taste buds. Can do different things depending on the levels of heat or sugar that's in the dish. And I think there's just lots of fun little ways that you can work with the flavor profiles and the mouthfeel in a dish compared to beer. So
I don't know why, but I always found Belgian beers to go really well with spicy food. I don't know if that's like weird or not, but like it's kind of like creamier than a lot of other stuff, so it kind of helps temper the heat a little bit. But I don't know. I've always found myself drinking Belgian beers when I get like hot shit.
Yeah, my like go to if I had no idea what to pair a dish with, it was Saison Dupont. That was that was the bottom line. If anything was tricky, Saison Dupont.
And it was still special enough for most people to be like, oh yeah, I've never had this before, or oh, it's been forever since I've had this it's gonna be great with
Uh-huh.
this dish. I don't know anything about food pairings and beer pairing. Like it's never been on my radar. Like every Halloween and in Easter, people are just like, yeah, we're doing a candy and beer pairing. I'm just like, I don't think that's gonna be good, but also I don't know. I don't care.
The Girl Scout cookie.
Yeah, the Girl Scout
pairing, that's very hot.
In your role with either Beer House or New Belgium, did you ever find yourself in those situations of like having to come up with something for an account on the fly? Or
Yeah, for sure. We did. So this was probably 8 years ago. We did a collaboration with Ben and Jerry's, and we made a cookie dough ice cream with Ben and Jerry's that had. We did two. One was like a brownie batter that had a darker beer in it, and then one was cookie dough and had fat tire in it.
Nice.
And so me and my big mouth decided that I would do like a whole tasting menu of different Ben and Jerry's ice creams, and I would pair it with a New Belgium beer.
That's fun.
And it was fun, but
Yeah.
it was.
That's a lot of work.
I honestly think you can kind of talk yourself into anything sometimes too. It's all about, everyone has a different way that they perceive things. And so just talking about things, and it's the same thing with wine. If you help someone and say, oh, wow, you can really smell a lot of raisin on that. And then someone else would be like, oh shit, I smell raisin now.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's incredible. So that was really hard. I did that at the Hopcat in Lexington. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
That was fun. But like pairing our Transatlantic Creek, which is a cherry sour ale, and then finding a beer to pair that with finding an ice cream to pair that with was crazy.
Especially those beers like that are kind of like, Creek is so delicious that it's hard to remember like the first time you were drinking that kind of stuff. And same with big bitter IPAs, like it's an acquired taste. So giving like a friendly way to kind of get somebody's head around what this is like supposed to taste like. It's a dumb thing to say, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's just talking about it. It's having a conversation. That's, I think, the most important part.
And that's what it takes to probably be a good beer rep too. Did those skills kind of help you out when you were kind of getting started, like
Most
first
definitely.
at Bell's?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just, I think, with the beer business and any business, there's a lot of things that are involved in getting a beer to someone's hands. There's distribution, there's brewing it, there's, freight and cost and all these things. But at the end of the day, and I think what I love about the beer industry so much is it's a relationship business. And we get to have a conversation and talk to and meet some of, I think, the coolest people in the world who are beer people and fans of beer. So I love that aspect. And even though I think now I sit at my desk and do more video meetings than anything else now and get frustrated about freight problems.
Oh yeah.
I love being able to go out and just talk to people.
So we talked a little bit about going to Belgium a second ago. What was that experience like for you and with New Belgium on your anniversary trip?
Oh man, it was awesome. So your 5-year trip, you get to go to Belgium. And we, even now since the integration with Bell's, we are retroactively sending Bell's people to Belgium now, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
So like Chris, for example, Chris Johnson, if you worked at Bell's for 4 years, like he has, next year he can go on the 5-year Belgium trip, which is pretty cool.
Does he get a bike?
He gets a bike. Yeah. His bike will be here soon.
That's great.
Everybody got a bike. So the Belgian trip, we go to, we kind of recreate the original bike ride beer adventure that our founder did. So it's driving through, he shipped his bike to Belgium, which was kind of like a mountain bike-esque thing with big fat tires, which was not what they saw a lot in Belgium. And he rode around the Belgian countryside just learning about beer and visiting breweries. And so on the Belgium trip, you get to recreate that.
Jeff was like an electrical engineer or something, right? So like he was going over there for work, but then like on the side, he was learning about
was a home brewer.
Beer stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a home brewer. So wanted to learn about beer. So he in Bruges, he found a bar called Bruges Beer J, and he made friends with the pub owner there, and just got to sample and taste all sorts of fun styles of beer. And so on our trip, we go there, and they close the place down for us and have a whole big New Belgium thing. It was actually my birthday when I was there, and I cried like a baby.
Oh.
The whole group, there were about, it was a big crew because it was right after we'd done a big hiring for the Asheville brewery to come online. So it was one of the larger sized groups to go on the Belgium trip. And so like 50 people and Kim Jordan.
That's crazy.
Fangirl moment. Started singing happy birthday to me. And I'd of course been drinking all day already. And yeah, I just cried like a baby. It was great.
That's awesome. That's a great team building activity too.
Yeah.
Like you'll remember that forever. Like that's freaking awesome.
I remember going to that bar in Bruges, and I remember seeing, like, I guess I knew that was the New Belgium bar, but by the time I got there, I kind of forgot about that. It was just like, oh yeah, this is a beer place that I was told to go to. And then in the corner of my eye, I saw like a tin tacker for Fat Tire, and I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. And I was like thinking through, like, wait, this is the place. And I got really excited. Then I talked to the guy behind about the bar, and then he was like, oh, come here. And then he turned the tin tacker around, and it was like the signatures from all the New Belgium employees that were there on the most recent trip.
Did you see my name?
This was, I think, before you. Yeah, it was before you went there.
I've had a few people who have sent me pictures of my tin tacker where they see my name on the wall because it says like Britt, Kentucky or something. And
the whole story is really fresh in my mind because I just a few days ago got to do the New Belgium Asheville tour, and thank you for hooking me up with some of that. Appreciate it. But I guess the New Belgium employees keep a tradition of going there on a Wednesday, even though the bars traditionally close on Wednesdays. And the only reason that is significant is because I think Jeff went there. Again, this is really fresh in my mind. I just don't like to have this. Jeff went there on the Holy Day of Ascension, I think. And typically they'd be closed, but because it was a holiday, a holy day, they just happened to be open. Please tell me if I'm wrong in any of this. And because of that, they continue to send New Belgium employees there to continue that tradition of Jeff going there on a Wednesday.
Yeah. So they put a little sign on the door that says closed for the day for New Belgium party.
That's awesome.
And they're just like, New Belgium.
I was gonna say, like all the other people in the street are like, New Belgium.
What's going on?
It's like a political movement going on or something.
Exactly.
It's like, just drinking some beer, man.
But that is really cool. I mean, I feel like New Belgium is a place of traditions between the bike trip and the New Belgium or the Belgium anniversary trip. And then also just, a promise and culture to employees that has always been kind of significant and something that stood out. Is that why you were kind of attracted to that place to begin with, or was there other reasons? Or
most definitely, New Belgium is, I've worked there. I'm in my 9th year now. Sabbatical next year.
Yep.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
You get in after 10 years. New Belgium has always just been a company that does right by people and the planet. And I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to work for a company like that.
To the listeners who don't know, can you explain kind of how New Belgium's model works? Where I don't know how it is now, but when you went on, it was the model where
we were employee owned, which was pretty incredible, and that was what really drew me to New Belgium more than anything. Was to have a piece of the profits. And even though, we sold a few years ago, which was great, and we all got a portion of that sale, depending on our tenure, we still always participate in profit share, even still then for a company. And I think that really helps employees have a continued drive to succeed and grow. So that's a big piece to it. And then also just being sustainably conscious. That is a huge part of it. Like I said, there's a lot that goes into brewing beer. A lot of energy is used. And New Belgium has always really wanted to do right by the planet. And so being focused on our carbon emissions, we were one of the first breweries to use wind power and solar power. And that has always just kind of been at the forefront of our business model, but also just using business as a force for good in general. So
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty great.
We'll talk a little bit about Fat Tire in a second, but I think Fat Tire is a carbon neutral beer now, right?
It's true. Yeah, that was, we started that about 2 years ago and has been kind of a continuing growing process. So we were, Fat Tire was carbon neutral as of 2 years ago, but now we're continuing to grow that and continuing to kind of do those to offset our carbon footprint. So we are now, with the new Fat Tire recipe, we are using some raw unmalted barley, which is a whole brand new thing that you don't see a lot. And that is essentially, as you guys know, most barley is roasted, it's toasted. That's how you get that color and that flavor, especially in an amber ale. And by using some raw barley, we are cutting back on our energy consumption.
Yeah, John, you're the homebrew shop owner.
That's actually
barley
news
guy.
to me. I was thinking it over in my head as you were explaining that. I'm assuming you just use a percentage of it in your mash, and then you just use the malted, the enzymes from all the malted stuff. As long as you have 20 or 30% of your mash containing those enzymes, it'll work on all that other stuff. And I would think that it would contribute a little bit more to the body of the final beer too, rather than just being like cost savings. Like a lot of the old school beers would use like raw wheat, raw barley, and stuff like that. And that's what's kind of characteristic of the more nuanced stuff that you get out of a beer that's otherwise pretty simple. And then a lot of New England IPAs use like unmalted wheat and unmalted barley and stuff like that. But
mix and
and all that crazy
blueberry
stuff.
muffin powder.
Yeah, but no, that's actually super interesting. And then I know like a lot of the carbon footprint not only you think like yeast eat sugar and make CO2, but that's a very small percentage. Most of it's in like the agricultural side, like hauling grain to a factory, hauling it out, packaging it, all the industrial exactly.
Things.
So being able to kind of skip the middleman with a pretty big being the maltster percentage of your grist, that would have a big impact.
Yeah,
and it probably also makes the beer taste a lot more kind of nuanced and interesting than it would be just kind of with commercially available, 2-row malt or whatever. Like, so I'll be conscious of that as we drink these, and actually
excellent.
I'll look forward to reading up more on that, because that's something I kind of now want to experiment with.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And from what I know, we are the only large national brewery that is doing that right now.
I've never heard of it before. That's very new to me.
See if it works.
Yeah,
buy some Fat Tire.
Well, it makes beer, so yeah, at the very least, it works. That's kind of going back to what you were talking about, just about how fun it is to work for a company that's innovative, cares about their people, cares about the environment. It seemed like that really was a good business strategy for Fat Tire too, because happy yeast makes happy beer, and happy employees makes a happy brewery. It seems like. But what was it like being a part of a brewery that, because you kind of came on? I mean, New Belgium's been around for a long time, but it seems like
New Belgium and I are the same age.
Really?
I think.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. But it seems like the explosive growth phase, probably started right around the time where you were coming on board.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think I'd probably been around for 2 or 3 years. And I remember we went to our yearly sales plan meeting where we talk about our innovation for the next year and kind of what our growth plans are and, how we're going to do it. And they put on a picture of the Voodoo Ranger.
I was going to go there. Yeah.
And we were all like, what? This is so dumb.
That's
This
great.
is not going to work. This is terrible. What in the fuck? Holy moly. Like, get me on LinkedIn. This is crazy. And it was pure marketing genius looking at it now. I think like the reality was we found that New Belgium, and I think a lot of craft beer, was starting to age out with the drinkers, and we weren't bringing in new drinkers.
Yeah.
They were drinking Four Loko. They were drinking
R.I.P. to those poor souls.
All those things, right?
You remember when Four Loko was alcoholic? Anybody else that old?
I remember
Yeah.
those days.
If I remember this correctly, it was like Peter Picard, the original brewer, had some like pushback on the IPA trend, right?
Yeah, it was.
And the Voodoo Ranger is like a jab at you, like the Rangers in the field, right?
Yeah, that's what we were called as a sales team. We were rangers. We were out in the field selling beer. And it was our Seattle sales team. And this was like 1991, the sales team, because we were New Belgium. We made Belgian style ales, and that was it. And it was our
Because
sales
Ranger
team in
IPA
Seattle.
had been around for a while.
Mhm.
Like that
Yeah.
was like one of the cores.
Right. That was in 1990.
Okay.
And it was our Seattle sales team that said, like, I think this IPA thing might be something we should consider. And Peter Bucart was, not into it, but did it. And here we are today. So,
Yeah, and now it's the most successful craft beer launch of the most recent Juice Force.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna see if you had the current stats on that, but I know Voodoo Ranger is like the best selling. Fill in the rest of that sentence.
Yes.
I don't get it wrong.
We are the best selling IPA.
Yeah.
The whole Voodoo Ranger family. During COVID times, we really focused on, the convenience channel, which was going into a convenience store was not somewhere you would typically find a craft beer.
Mhm.
So they told us to like stop what you're doing and let's learn about the convenience channel. And see how that ticks and how we can maybe get into that. And
that's like your Walgreens, like
it's your-
CVS,
it's
like
your gas Thorntons,
stations.
it's your
Yeah.
5-star, it's
Uh-huh.
all that.
I buy beer there more than I would care to admit.
Right,
Because like, yeah.
right, me too, same deal. And so we really started with the 19.2 innovation. And we have just kind of had a stronghold on that. So Juice Force last year was the #1 craft beer launch of the year. And we say it was not only the #1 craft beer launch of the year, but the #1 beer launch
Wow.
of the year, and essentially the #1 beer launch in the history of New Belgium, and the #1 beer launch, we believe, in the universe.
Yeah,
Hell
like
yeah.
you met your yearly sales goal of it, I think, in like March of that year or something.
It was nuts. We sold more beer about halfway through the year than we had planned for the whole year. So it was nuts. I think COVID honestly gave us a big boost because we were set. We had the right relationships with being able to get cans and materials.
Mhm.
So we didn't have any out of stock issues at that time. And I think we also, honestly, I think during that time, we had a sales boost because people went back to something maybe that they were more familiar with the New Belgium name, and not just trying the rotating IPA nation kind of craze. So that really helped us. And then we just hit the ground running with Juice Force. And now we're doing that with Fruit Force.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
John,
Tell us
if-
about Fruit Force.
Yeah.
what is this Fruit Force of which you
Well,
speak?
I brought one.
All right,
and
all
you
right.
guys
Oh.
have to. You got to taste it. You
Hell
have
yeah.
to smell it.
Absolutely.
Um,
I actually just had the Juice Force in Asheville for the first time. That was the, I was
Oh,
I,
no way.
I was just like, I knew it existed and I really wanted to try it, but at the same time I was like, I don't buy cans to go anymore. Like I just don't drink at home, so I'm just like,
Sure.
okay, it needs to have something, especially in a 9.5% imperial whatever.
Yep.
But John, have you had that?
No.
Oh
It's
my
delicious.
All
goodness.
right.
It's orange juice. Like it's so good.
Uh-huh.
Hell yeah.
So I brought the new version, which is Fruit Force. But what we found, and kind of the reason that we are as successful as we are right now, is through the Voodoo Ranger, we found kind of the secret sauce with how to engage a younger beer drinker, which was through
Skeletons.
It was through the internet. It was through Twitch. I don't even know what Twitch is.
Yeah.
To
Oh,
be
yeah.
honest with you.
Mhm. We're on Twitch right now.
Oh,
No, we're not.
No,
hi Twitch.
We should be. We probably should be.
probably.
Thanks for the sub.
So it's been through kind of this like guerrilla marketing campaign online, and not having a commercial in the Super Bowl. That's how we found the younger beer drinker, and also finding a way to pull in people that were not typically craft drinkers.
Mhm.
So we found that we are pulling in people who were drinking seltzer, who were drinking Four Loko, who were drinking fruity ass juice boxes in their childhood, who were drinking Malibu and orange juice. It's not just craft beer drinker. And that's how we've gotten to where we are.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people would benefit to think that way too, just because a reason that like Budweiser buys Super Bowl commercials every year, and at this point they kind of like have to. But being a little bit, being more guerrilla and creative like that is how you find the new people. Not everybody
Right.
freaking watching the Super Bowl already knows about Budweiser. It's like,
Yeah.
where are the
being nimble, and also not being afraid to evolve and take risks.
That's how I
helped
found New
us.
Belgium. I think I probably knew about it and had it, but when I first like fell in love with the brand, it was we're taking a trip to Colorado. This would have been like 20 years ago or something. But walked in, we were like exhausted from traveling. Walked into some little pizza place near the place we were staying, and they had like a couple different craft beers on. But then I saw like Fat Tire, and they served it in like pitchers, and I was like, just give me a pitcher of Fat Tire. And it was like a transforming experience, just eating pizza, being exhausted, being in Colorado, drinking a like local beer, and it was delicious. And I was just like, you know what? New Belgium's fucking good, and I love it. I have ever since. So it wasn't like a commercial, or it wasn't like seeing an in display that made me want to buy it. It was just being in a like with a relationship in a local place, and the person recommended it, and like I fucking loved it, and then I loved it ever since. Yeah,
Pizza and Fat Tire.
yeah.
It's a perfect combination.
I think my first New Belgium beer was 1554.
That's a good one.
The black
Yeah,
one.
that's a really
It's
good one.
Very good. But before then, I admit I was probably drinking more Two Hearted. So with the recent acquisition of Bell's, can you speak a little bit on how that went from your perspective?
Yeah, of course. We knew as New Belgium and a company that we were looking to purchase another brewery. And they told us in the next year, we're going to have another big brewery in America. We don't know who it's going to be yet, but the plan is with Kieran, who's our parent company, Lion Little World Beverage, which is based in Australia, was to kind of create a group of American breweries to grow. And so we knew that there would be something else in the fold. And we found out that it was Bell's. And
that must have been like an interesting meeting.
Moly, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine anything better. Two Hearted has always been one of my absolute favorite IPAs in the world. And so it was kind of shocking that it was such a big brewery and was so close to me and to this region. And there's not some like crazy story behind it. Just the reality was Bell's was a family run company. Larry Bell, everybody, I think if you're into beer, you've maybe heard of the name Larry Bell before. And he was ready to get out of the business for health reasons, for whatever. He was ready to move on.
Sometimes it's hard to have a retirement plan when you like own a brewery, because as much as like, you guys are killing it and Bell's is killing it, it's not like the most profit heavy industry to be in. Like there's a lot of operational costs, and especially when you treat your people well, like it's not,
exactly. And you can't just like retire and say goodbye.
And your blood, sweat, and tears kind of have to be there. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And he had two children who did not want to take on the family business. They had maybe tried once in their lifetime and realized that it was not for them. So Larry was willing to sell, and I think it was perfect timing and a perfect marriage and partnership. So
it's kind of interesting too. So Sam Adams and Dogfish merged. Do you remember what year that was?
It was like what, 3 years ago? I don't know.
It was before Bell's in
COVID.
New Belgium, though, right?
Yeah, it was. But it was before COVID. Yeah.
But it's so. And when I heard that New Belgium and Bell's were merging, I was like, "Oh shit, this is crazy! This is shocking." But then the more I thought about it, I was like, "This actually makes perfect sense." Because to compete with like the Budweisers, and we say on this podcast a lot, like craft beer is dead, or whatever, and that kind of references something you were saying. Like it's not just the biggest, Voodoo Ranger is not just the biggest like craft beer launch or the biggest IPA. Like it's
beer.
It competes against the big boys now, and the meaning of big boys is becoming less clear because a lot of those companies have merged in the past and are owned by entities like Kieran, or AB InBev is owned by whatever that Belgian group is that owns all those breweries and whatnot. So it was cool to see Sam Adams and Dogfish Head kind of like combine their power in the market to kind of form an entity that can do more to just compete in the distribution model that we have in the United States, and just to do more stuff. So it kind of was the same thing that when it was like New Belgium and Bell's, like, yeah, two companies with really good ideologies.
Yeah.
They make some of the best beer in the United States that are
I think so.
among the biggest. Has it changed your power as a rep so far after the merge? Do you see any of those kind of market benefits?
Our power as a company. Since we have merged with Bell's, we are now not just the number one craft brewer in the US. We're actually in the top 10 of brewers in the US. And that's
a big deal.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's huge.
So that's pretty cool. And that's something that just recently happened in the last few months, which is incredible. Most of that has been by the success of the Voodoo Ranger and then also bringing Bell's into the fold. But that's big time. And that's something that I think a lot of craft brewers didn't think was possible. Because if you think about like the craft beer share in the beer world over the years, it's always been like, oh, craft beer is like 6% of all beer or all beer that's consumed. And that's very slowly kind of creeped up and grown. And I know, there's, I don't even know anymore what like the delineation is for the Brewers Association anymore. And honestly, that
changes every year.
Bother me.
We always used to say it was like Sam Adams plus one barrel.
Right. It's a moving target constantly. Like I don't think about that stuff anymore because I know that, I feel confident in what we do as a company. And a lot of people have asked me like, why do you need to continue to grow? New Belgium is such a big company already. Why do you have to keep growing and growing and growing? But why wouldn't you want to? If you have a good company and good values and you make a good product, Larry Bell always said, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
So,
and if you wanted to view it, it's how can I phrase this like politically correct? No, it's actually not bad. But if you have that power to create good jobs and take care of your people, like rep your shit. Like you make the best shit you can, and like, exactly, just grow it and take care of people, and like be a force for good in the market.
And also, let's be honest, like it's big in our minds because we are in this world every day, but still so many people don't know New Belgium. They don't know Bell's. They don't know Fat Tire. They don't know Two Hearted. Like it's just, maybe more than 10 years ago, maybe more than 5 years ago. But it's still just not on the radar of every beer drinking consumer.
No, it's funny. So I used to say, oh, I work for New Belgium Brewery. My name's Brittney. And then I would get a dead face. And then I would say, we make Fat Tire?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, you work for the Fat Tire or the flat tire?
Fat Tire Brewing.
Good Lord. And I was like, yeah. and now
flat 12.
Even then, now I say we make Voodoo Ranger and so it depends on my audience, honestly, who I'm talking to, whether I like lead with we make Voodoo Ranger or we make Fat Tire or we make Bell's Two Hearted. It's really interesting because we really do now reach so many different consumers. It's not the same person who drinks all of our beers, which is pretty cool.
We always ask our guests to bring a couple different items for a show and tell segment. One of those segments involves beverage. So did you happen to bring a beverage?
I did. I brought the new Fat Tire.
Hell yeah.
Which we can taste. Natural segue. I found the oldest Fat Tire I could find.
I love drinking old beer. Let's do it.
The oldest Fat Tire in town, which was worked out perfectly because I always buy out of date beer in the market when I find it, like a good little beer rep. So this beer, and I know you guys kind of talked about it before, but we did kind of like, I've made some comments like, you know how you put frogs in water and then you turn it up slowly to boil.
I do that every day.
I know this is like a weird, terrible thing to say, but that's kind of what we've been doing with Fat Tire because we knew that changing the recipe of Fat Tire was a big, scary thing. And we were going to have people with pitchforks coming at us and their torches. And so I think it was kind of an evil genius thing that we did. And so in the last year, we've kind of slowly been blending the new recipe of Fat Tire in with the old recipe of Fat Tire. So what this is, I don't have a bottle opener, but so that is a blend that is about 60% old recipe fat tire.
And so the original Fat Tire was just an American amber ale, which is just good old American base malt, probably some light caramel malts in there. I think you guys maybe use a little bit of something like Special Roast or Munich or something in there, from what I recall. And then what is it? Probably like Willamette hops or probably a little Cascade, maybe.
Look at you.
So we got to do a side by side. Because the big thing that you have to look at is the color is different. And that's been, I think, the hardest part for us so far. I think so far it seems like people really love the liquid, but it can be a little jarring at first when you look at the difference. If you're sitting at your favorite tap room and you get a Fat Tire draft. And a lot of that, as we kind of talked about, comes from that raw barley that we're using.
I mean, looking at the OG amber, the quote unquote OG, it is even lighter than I remember with the 60% blend.
Yeah.
At what was the smallest amount of the blend that you all did that you introduced into the market? Was it like, all right, we're going to do an 80-20 and then see what happens?
I don't know for sure. I think the longest one we did was a 60-40. And that kind of started in the summer of last year. But I don't know if we started probably 10 or 20% just to kind of start creeping it in. Our brewmaster, Christian Holbrook, had been working on this for years, and this was kind of his idea of a way to kind of help continue to offset our carbon footprint. And the reality is, like, we all have a very sweet, touching story of the first time we had a Fat Tire.
We're old as fuck. We don't matter anymore.
Totally. Yeah. You're like borderline.
Yeah,
Mike.
we're borderline.
I was gonna say, like, I remember 1554. I don't really remember Fat Tire because it was already just like so prevalent in life.
There. But yeah, the reality is, the last 5 years, sales have been down for Fat Tire. It's still the number one beer we produce at New Belgium, so it is nothing to shake a stick at. It's a great beer and we sell a lot of it, but we saw that sales were declining. And so I think it was time to do something bold and crazy and make a change.
And people, and myself included, I have a nostalgic connection to it, like the story I told you guys or whatever. But
when
at the end of the day, I don't, like I do enjoy your all's like mixed 12 pack that is out. It has, I think the Black Lager, Fat Tire, original Ranger, maybe last time I got it, and then like a Voodoo Ranger or something hazy. So anyway, I do like it. But that being said, you're not like going out of your way to find amber ales a lot these days.
Right. They're just not sexy anymore.
Yeah.
They're just not.
And this is not necessarily something unique. Like, if anything, it kind of shows a maturation of the craft beer industry, because all brands do this with their most successful brands. Like, remember New Coke? And like Coke and Pepsi do this all the time.
We make so many jokes about New Coke.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Just reformulate the recipe. Like, I know like fast food does it a lot with their like reformulated things. Yeah. So if anything, it actually to me is a sign of health rather than just kind of clinging on to something and letting it kind of become just like a defunct brand that old people like myself and Todd Ferris talk about.
Right.
It's something fresh and it's got a can design that's new and I like the branding is freaking awesome.
It's cool. It's vintage. It's modern.
Yeah.
It's everything.
The only promise that we'll ask from the New Belgium team is to like once a decade, just like Coke and Pepsi do, you got to do like throwback tire.
Throwback.
Yeah. Give us the flat tire. Like the old and busted version, just so the nerds can go get a pint at the tap room.
Oh, I just had a memory unlocked. I remember it was 2016, 2015, Fat Tire and Friends, with the collaboration series, and I think it was like a mixed 6-pack or mixed.
Oh, it was a mixed 12-pack.
12-pack, yeah, that was cool. I remember Rheingeist being involved with that. I think
they were. Yeah, it was Rheingeist, Avery, Hopworks, Sierra Nevada.
But yeah, the whole idea was to be like, hey, what is your take on Fat Tire and what would you tweak? And we'll call it a collaboration. Is that?
Yeah, they did their version they did like a innovative amber ale.
Yeah,
so
that's super fun.
There was one that was a lager, there was a hoppy one, there was a farmhouse amber. It was really cool.
So we'll do some tasting notes for everybody who's really curious to try this experiment. The original Fat Tire, quote unquote, is pretty close to what I remember. It's malty. I think the original, obviously, since this is a blend, was a little bit kind of more caramel malty forward, a little bit darker, but this scratches the itch. The new one is a couple shades SRM lighter, and I really,
so much brighter.
you know, you get that placebo effect thing going on, but I can almost kind of get the vibe of the unmalted wheat, or of the unmalted barley, rather. A lot of those, like, you know, Belgian beers will use like that spelt malt or the chit malt and things like that. This kind of gives me that kind of a vibe. So it's got a little bit more malt complexity than you'd get in like just a straight up blonde ale, or like, what are you guys technically going to call this one now?
Technically, it's a classic ale.
Okay.
Is that, hold on.
No,
Technically.
technically, no.
Is it technically?
No, technically, it's a golden ale.
Okay.
Technically, it's a golden ale, but I think, you know, this is kind of a new weird thing. So, Fat Tire is just Fat Tire, baby. You don't
Fat
have to
Tire's just
put
Fat Tire.
You don't have
It's
to
its
put
own
it in
thing.
a box.
Yeah.
It's the David S. Pumpkins. I'm my own thing,
own
man.
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just Fat Tire.
I
Don't
really,
worry-
this is the
don't
first time
worry
I've had
about
the
it.
new straight
yeah?
up. This is my first experience with it. I really like it. Yeah, I really do.
I like it more. Honestly, I
okay,
want to. I want to.
so again, the nostalgia thing is hard for me to overcome. But if I was to like crack my head on the sidewalk and like wake up and like be like, I need a beer, but I can't remember anything about like my former life.
Our life.
Yeah, and if I was to pick one of these to be my like crusher, might be a weird word after talking about smashing my head, but like,
Right, sure.
this is really good. I really like this. It's very dry. It's very drinkable. It's very clean, but it gives me some vibes of the old school kind of caramel malt without being caramelly.
The aroma is the same to me. It reminds me of Fat Tire, which goodness, like it would have been a fun thing. Like I could probably smell and look at a Fat Tire and tell you if it was like 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days old.
Which brewer made it?
It was a whole weird
which bright
thing.
tank it sat in. Yeah.
And we used to do that. We used to do contests for that at the brewery.
That's great.
That's
We
awesome.
would do blind taste tests to tell how old a beer was. But the aroma reminds me of Fat Tire, but it's drinkable. It's crushable. It's crisper. It's brighter.
I would drink a pitcher of this with a big pizza.
So are we?
drink it with a pizza?
Are we just going to declare, you know, summer 2023 the summer of Fat Tire? I mean,
It's
I'm-
like what it's like hot girl summer. This
Yeah,
is like
this is
new
Fat Tire summer.
Summer Fat Tire.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
I'm for it. Yeah, that's really good. And again, if it keeps the brand around, and if it keeps something that I loved nostalgically, like fresh and new people entering the market, and if it means there's more 6-packs of it to drink, I'll drink the shit out of that.
If people get bikes because I drink this beer, then let's just keep
win-win.
That's
Why
fine.
not?
It's
Right.
great for
Totally.
everybody. So Brittney, you've said that you've been around quite a minute for both New Belgium and then beer at large. Prior to that, you've moved up in the beer world. You've seen a lot of people come and go in this industry. I feel like that's like there's a threshold where you either you age out or you lean into it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a time that I thought like the lifestyle of a beer rep was not a sustainable life for me. I'm a mother. I've got 2 boys. I have a very moody, almost 10-year-old now. Oh,
Jeez.
so many emotions.
Yeah.
Goodness. He yelled at me last night because we were playing a board game.
Because of new Fat Tire.
And he was like, I don't
Mom,
want...
it's not the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it needs more caramel malt.
Where's the
like,
caramel
son?
mart, mommy?
Yeah.
No, he was like, I don't want to play your old man board games anymore. And he stormed off. I was like, well,
He's got a point. Board
Yeah.
games are boring as shit.
I was like, well, you're not getting on your tablet. But yeah, it's, you know, it's been a wild ride. And I think being able to kind of grow in the company, learn more about the business has been an awesome option for me at New Belgium to kind of, like I said, learn more about freight and margins. And, you know, what I primarily do now is I set a plan and work with our distributor partners. And so I forecast with them and we set goals and then we work to achieve those goals.
And talk about like, I mean, you know, that's a tough job in a normal time. Doing that during the past like 2 or 3 years with all the supply chain issues and with people drinking more and in different ways, and that's tough. So I bet you learned a lot.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It was crazy. And I'm still learning. Still learning a lot. So it's great. I still think it's the greatest industry in the world to work in, and I'm really lucky that I'm in it. But I also bust my ass.
Yeah.
You're in many phones still as Beer House Brittney to some folks. John King specifically.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And this was a question from him specifically, but what are the changes in the Louisville beer scene that stick out the most from your perspective over the years?
Well, it's gone from like 0 to 100, I would say, for sure, in the last 12 years. It's incredible. There's so many great breweries now that were not here before. It's nuts. There are options now.
But how does that, I guess, impact you now then?
I will say that there have been some hardships in what we call the on-premise, which is bars and restaurants, because a lot of bars and restaurants now will say we only will put local beer on tap. So that's a struggle. And I always say, like, but I'm local.
Yeah.
What about me? I'm a taxpayer. That doesn't work. Not a
I
good
live right
selling
down the
strategy.
road.
Like, come on,
Have you
man.
listened to this episode of the Kentucky Commons Radio Hour podcast? Come on.
So that's definitely been a challenge and a struggle. But I also think that New Belgium and Bell's, like, I feel pretty darn confident in our beers and our consistency, and we're a trusted brand. So
New Belgium and Bell's are probably two of the most consistent breweries that like I know of. On I've never bought like a stinky sixer, if anything, of your all's, like even the New England IPAs, which can go that way.
sure, yeah.
At CVS, like which is where I'll usually buy Fat Tire, like at this little Walgreens or whatever it is right across the corner.
No, I get
and
it.
that's saying something, because that's the easiest place for stuff to get stanky.
Oh yeah, no, I buy West 6th IPA
Yeah,
at the
that's
Walgreens
solid.
by my house.
Yeah.
That's my go-to.
That's a good
last minute.
Walgreens.
Yeah. Fuck. If you say so. So that's always a struggle. And so because of that, I've found that we're an off-premise brand. I think more than anything, we have a really strong chain team, and our chain business is banging. So you can always find our beer in a Kroger or a Meijer or a Target or a Walmart. And so we always have that. But then again, it goes back to building those relationships in the bars and restaurants and the local establishments that kind of just keep us going.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity in October of 2021 for you to come. I know, for you
Good
to
old
come
days.
on our Women in Beer panel for Louisville Beer Week, and unfortunately something popped up. So I've been saving this question for that long of time. But do you have any advice for any women that want to either break into the beer industry or maybe grow within the beer industry?
Or anyone. Like,
Yeah. No,
it's-
I think the time is now. It's been I've been in the beer industry for a long time, and I've seen a lot of things, and a lot has changed over the years. I will certainly say that. Working in the industry now is completely different than working in the industry 15 years ago. And I'm glad for that. And I feel like I was able to weather those storms, but it's really cool and empowering to see how much has changed and how much the culture has changed, and how people, I think, have grown as a society over this time. And we actually just got this stat recently. So New Belgium and Bell's, 33% of our workforce is female.
wow.
And that's the highest it's ever been.
Okay.
And it was like 7%, 10, 15 years ago. So,
And sorry to
No, go
interrupt,
ahead.
but the thing about that is, you look at the journey of somebody that starts like into the beer industry, and like, okay, maybe they're starting off as a bartender, and then they move on to a distributor, and then they eventually get to a brand. So that just tells me that the funnel is wider than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we as a brewer and a supplier, we usually hire from within the beer community. So it's someone who's worked for a distributor, someone who's worked for a brewery, someone who's worked for a bar, a restaurant, or a liquor store. Like, there's always a way to get your foot in the door. I didn't go to college. I started at the ground up in the industry, and I've worked my way through this whole time. And I think that's something that's really cool and really accessible, that not a lot of other industries have.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I think that still goes. I think it's about what you know and being willing to learn throughout the process.
And the learning is fun because like
And
you get to drink beer while you do it, and like, but it makes you appreciate beer more too. And I'm sure it makes you like a better, salesman when you can have these conversations with people. Because it ultimately makes like the bartender's job easier to have some knowledge of the products more than just like what you're going to read on the side of a can.
Sure.
To talk to their customers about when they come in, just like me back in Colorado, way back in the day. Like it just, I don't know, it keeps it top of mind, and it makes a new way to establish a relationship with your product through the person who's pouring it at any given place to the person who's drinking it, and then like becomes a person who's going to complain about Fat Tire recipe changing in like 20 plus years or whatever.
I've gotten a few emails, but nothing too crazy.
Good. Yeah.
And you guys we have to smell and taste Fruit Force.
Yeah.
Oh, please
Let's
let's go ahead and do it then. Yeah.
I think it might be
I gotcha.
way back in there.
Is this part of your beverage show and tell still, or just a little bonus?
This is I guess a bonus and a part of show and tell. So this is Fruit Force.
Ooh,
so
look
this
at that
is
can.
an extension of the Juice Force family, which we talked about, which is #1 beer in the universe. So this has kicked off the year with a huge bang, and will most likely again get that #1 launch of the year spot. So it's kind of like Juice Force, which you said you recently had, you hadn't had before. It smells red.
It does not look red.
It does not look red.
And specifically, it's a fruit punch IPA.
Yes, it's a hazy imperial fruit punch IPA.
Okay, it smells red. I'm getting the aromas.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It smells like a
Definitely smells like
Hawaiian
red.
punch. Smells red. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, we found so much success in innovation and pulling people that were not craft beer drinkers into the craft beer categories with stuff like this, because that doesn't smell like a craft beer.
No.
So my brain is now already trying to like reverse engineer how you guys got this like crazy big aroma in here. So it's also 9.5% ABV. So
that's the other thing.
And
we found.
and is this also a 19.2 ounce can?
It sure
So what's
is.
the price point? Expected price point MSRP in the C store.
It's a $10.99 6-pack. It's a $2.99 19.2, and that's what we found with success too. Is that people want a higher gravity. And at a reasonable price. So you want to get.
And this is officially in our market right now.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah. It's
do you know what yeast you guys use in this one?
No.
I'm getting like hints of that thiol stuff just because of how big that aroma is. I'll do some digging on here.
I can pull it up on my phone.
Well, it might be. We maybe keep the secrets, but like that aroma is unbelievable. It is like it's a fruit punch.
There's a Japanese citrus fruit that we use.
Yuzu?
Lychee?
Ikoyan.
Oh,
It's like a satsuma, but different. So it's that Japanese citrus and then a fruit punch flavoring. So I know we use
that's crazy.
Within that, no,
it's fruit punch beer.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't.
But it
taste
still has
like
a bitterness to it, but not like off-putting.
So, you guys might be onto something here. This is very unique too. I've never had anything quite like this.
It's weird.
So I will say this: Juice Force was unlike any beer I've had in recency. Juice Force. There were elements of beer to it, I guess, but it honestly just tasted like a whole other beverage. This tastes a little bit more like, okay, yeah, it's beer. I understand.
It's an IPA.
Yeah, it's an IPA. It's a very fruit punch IPA, but like. Just again, John, go try Juice Force, because if you want to be like shocked by something, it's insane. It's good. It's delicious, but
a lot of the craft beer nerds that I know really like Juice Force and say that it's a fantastic beer, and I think it is too, for being high gravity and having so Juice Force has the same intense aroma, but it is orange. It's citrus, big time, but then 9.5%.
Yeah, it does not taste like
Really
that
easy
either.
drinking.
This is
Very
like what Four
surprising.
Loko should have been.
It'll get you in trouble.
And you can
for
get
sure.
19 ounces of it for $2.99
That's
at
incredible.
Walgreens.
At
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gas station.
Love that.
I think also I'm gonna have to I'll pick your brain or do some reading off air, but experimenting with wild exotic fruits like that too, I think is like an under
Mm-hmm.
experimented with, or it's something you can definitely capitalize on because fruit IPAs were hot for a hot minute back in the days of like when Sculpin was taking over everything.
Right.
And then that kind of died off and led into like session IPAs for a minute, or maybe that was first. And then New England's kind of took over for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody was just iterating on different New England IPAs. Somebody came up with this god bastard thing called a lactose IPA and milkshake IPA. But this is actually a trend that I can appreciate because not only are you getting the subtlety of the beer, but now I just want to explore what this weird ass fruit is to play with in my own brewing, but then also just to taste and try and whatnot. That's I'm very curious about that. That's really good.
Yeah, I think that with New Belgium being around for as long as we have, and I think that kind of the street cred that we have with our incredible sour program,
We should talk about
and
that,
just
yeah.
our brewing history, like we have been doing some cool things, and we always, the whole time I've been in New Belgium, it's always some like, well, I've never heard of that line before. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Always really kind of on the cutting edge of finding some new wild fruit or hop that's never been seen before. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation for another podcast. But just the introduction of sours to America from New Belgium
Yeah.
and Peter.
You guys had a lot to do with that.
That was
Yeah, we did that.
insane. Yeah, you did that.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah. So I mean,
A lot of
it's
our
incredible.
listeners are not in Louisville or Kentucky, but a lot of them are. Are there any like sleepy spots around town, accounts that you know where people should go to try to find kind of the New Belgium beers they might not see at CVS?
Well, I'm always a big fan of the Grails. I know they have a special sour of ours right now. It's called Green Walnut.
I just had that.
It's a sour
was
beer
great.
aged on
Yeah.
green walnuts, which tastes insane.
It's
and-
a La Terroir, right?
Yeah,
The
Terroir,
golden
yeah.
sour, yeah.
Mhm.
Whatever.
Golden sour, aged on green walnuts. Yeah, not for the nut allergen
No.
in your family, that's for sure. Which is why we decided not to put it in kegs.
Yeah, wise.
Right, just we don't want to go down that road.
But for those nut fans out there, yeah, you said it's on at the Holy Grail
They've
/
got,
Grails.
yeah, they've got bottles of it there. Yeah, we bring in stuff randomly. I need to get back into it. After COVID, I kind of just stopped bringing in a lot of our specialty beers.
We got the C stores going on.
But I think that, I don't know, I miss them, and so surely it's not just me, right?
Yeah. This episode will air after the fact. But Tailspin is coming up. Bringing anything good for Tailspin Ale Fest?
Holy moly, we sure are. So from the New Belgium side, we're bringing a really cool wood aged sour that is our kind of dark fruit wood aged beer that then we aged in Leopold whiskey barrels with a little bit of rye that is called Three Chambers. And then the Bell's like big grab that we're bringing, which I don't know if you guys remember this before, but this was a very, very special beer that Bell's always made called Black Note.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So we're bringing a vanilla bean Black Note.
hell yeah.
Which is from 2017.
It'll be great.
And then we have another one from Bell's, which is really cool. That's Kentucky Mule. So it's a bourbon.
It's like a
barrel
bourbon,
aged ginger.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Moscow Mule, but with bourbon, kind of, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Oh,
the Leopold brothers, they're the ones that do like a lot of the fruit forward whiskeys, right? They
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of the fruity barrels.
Yeah, and they're based in Fort Collins,
Yeah.
so we've always worked with them.
Give New Belgium a shout out too, because like, you're talking about like people preferring local brands and like local businesses like in Louisville or whatever, but especially not only Tailspin, but especially Tailspin, like you guys supported that from day one. Like,
Day one, I've been
yeah.
setting up jockey boxes for 10 years.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
New Belgium has done a lot more for Louisville beer than like you might think. Just because like that's the thing about beer people. They help
Yeah.
each other out. They support
Mhm.
each other's events. They like hype each other's shit when it's good.
Completely.
Yep.
It's funny. So Tish, who is the co-founder of the Tailspin Ale Fest, I've known her for 100 years, and she and I were actually.
That's strange. You guys are only 30.
I know, right?
That's so weird.
We actually we both applied for the New Belgium job.
Nice.
And it was between her and I. And it was a tough competition. So.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's the first time I've heard that.
That's pretty well.
Well, before we wrap up, we do have the other part of the show and tell segment where we've asked you to bring something that's not beverage related. Did you remember that
I
assignment?
didn't do that. I was before I came here. I was at a parent-teacher conference, and I was.
All right. Well, just give us your kid's report. That'll count.
Yeah.
He's a very smart boy. But a lot of high anxiety about choosing a middle school. I don't know if you guys know about this.
I don't. That's not on my radar
Oh, my
yet.
goodness, it's terrible. It's very scary.
I remember it from when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Feels like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Kid, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
doesn't matter.
matter. I know. Yeah.
Public
I know.
school, private school.
Public school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I went to no middle school.
That's top of my list.
I would recommend it. You're
All
close
right.
to U of L. You
Mhm,
get some of the things. You're right
So
across
that's
the street
like
from Manual.
Performing arts
Mhm.
and all that stuff. Okay. Well, Finn is he is Simba in The Lion King
Oh hell yeah!
for his school's musical right now. So hopefully that'll.
Well, yeah,
Give
if
us
he's
a
into the
leg up.
performing arts and stuff like that, yeah. I remember
Mhm.
when I went to high school at Manual as well, but like even when I was in middle school there, there's a lot of good connections between like the youth performing YPAS youth performing arts school,
Yeah.
and they would work with the kids over in at the place, and then also same thing with like the acting kids at U of L. So
Yeah, we just kind of.
I give
made
it
like
2 thumbs up.
Nice.
No
Yes.
windows in that school. There's no windows. It like looks like it was built during that like what do they call that? Like the brutalist architecture period of like
Oh,
the early
goodness.
70s or
Mhm,
whatever,
mhm.
where we
So
were
they
trying
call
to
it
be
tough
Soviet Russia.
times.
But the inside,
Now
the
it's just
trade-off
all
is like
gray
no
shipping
walls.
containers.
Yeah. So no windows on the outside, but then everything on the inside is like open plan. So it's kind of an interesting spot.
Weird.
At least that's how it was when I went there
Uh-huh.
100 years ago.
We just made a makeshift karaoke machine
Oh.
so that he can like
How'd you
get
MacGyver that?
comfortable on a microphone. A couple of beers and a trip to Guitar Center.
I love it.
It's
The
best
start
way
of
to-
a great American novel, I think.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's true.
Well, Brittany, I don't want to take up too much more of your time tonight. We really appreciate you coming
Yeah,
on and
thank
chatting
you.
all things
Thank
about
you,
you
thank you.
and New Belgium. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Anything? Any shout outs?
I'm excited for Tailspin, which I know is coming up soon and will come before this airs. But it's always so fun, and I'm looking forward to just seeing a lot of old friends and great people and trying some new beers.
It's going to be fun. I feel like it will be kind of a reunion. I feel like, we've been the last few years, the COVID kind of sleepiness is still
Mm-hmm.
around, but maybe this will be the great reunion for
Do
everybody.
you guys remember last year one of the tents
Oh, yeah.
busted
Yeah,
open and they had to
Yeah.
evacuate it?
Oh, like two
Yeah.
two of the tents. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
another tent.
And now there are no tents.
Usually it's like cold and snowy and wet, but last year it was beautiful
Mhm.
but windy as shit.
Very
Where it's like a record-breaking wind day, which
you
we just had
guys
a couple days ago. so.
Doing like a live stream or anything crazy?
TBD. We'll see kind of how
No.
it plays out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
just gonna enjoy it.
Gosh, years ago, it was across the river in the
Oh,
New Albany Beer
Keg
Fest-
Festival.
Festival.
Yeah.
I remember doing a live stream
Uh-huh.
with you.
Yep.
I was pouring beer.
We'll probably do one of those, if not at Tailspin, maybe at Craft Bash or something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah.
Nice.
But just
Very
to
cool.
highlight all
Take
the
the
cool
show on
local
the road,
stuff.
man.
100%.
Oh, we have been.
Get a live studio
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah. Oh, we've been doing it on the road.
Or like
It's
a
been
laugh
great.
track or something.
Oh, I
maybe.
don't want that at all.
Talk to Buddy at Monarch about our laugh track.
Oh, he
he's the
pushes. He
master.
knows this machine more than we do at this
Yeah.
point because I think you can just like push a button and it like.
It's not that one. You just muted
Not
yourself.
that one.
Oh,
Anyway.
whatever. John, what do you got to plug?
Oh gosh, I don't have anything to plug. I think what I will plug for all of the homebrewers listening is I just had a very interesting kind of preliminary meeting about kind of a revamp that we might be trying to do with the Kentucky State Fair homebrewing competition.
Ooh.
So if you are a homebrewer and you've never entered your beer into the state fair because it seems kind of like whatever, that's grandpa's beer contest. There's gonna be some new energy brought into it this year, so stay tuned for more details on that. But I'm excited. So yeah, state fair.
I loved last year looking at all the state fair winners, and there's some cool cats in there that are putting. It's not just beer, but like cakes and pies, and all sorts of different
That's
things.
the
It's
best
so
area
fun
of the
to
state
see.
fair. You look at like all the giant pumpkins people grew.
Oh yeah, we watched the pumpkin contest. They were weighing the pumpkins and doing the whole thing. It was nuts.
It's like who needs TV? You just watch people weigh pumpkins. Like
that's all you need.
Entertainment.
I took a selfie with the homebrew like background with the people that I knew that had won awards and sent him texts, and was like, I know this guy.
Louisville's got a great community of homebrewers, and like just like
sure.
you know, all good breweries start with somebody who's just like a homebrewer at heart,
That's true.
and then get some kind of a crazy idea up there, whatever, and 20 years later, like here it is.
Yep, gotta start with a soup pot somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the story of Louisville. Like everybody who has opened up a brewery in the past 12 years or whatever and made this place just go 0 to 100. We all have the homebrewers to thank. So tip your bartender and find somebody in your neighborhood who makes beer and they'll give you some. Yeah.
Find
or
a homebrewer
make your
friend.
own. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
On my end, shout out to Asheville.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I would say. If you've never been, just go, because you're gonna enjoy it and have a great time. If you haven't, or if you have been, if you go a lot, go there with a new perspective. Go in there with the wide-eyed wonder of a newborn babe.
Are you saying you were on mushrooms? Is that what I'm hearing?
Sounds like it got weird. Real weird.
Go to new spots or go to the same spots and just appreciate for what it is. Because if you're in our region of Kentucky, it's so close. And sometimes we just take it for granted, or maybe not granted enough. I don't know, one of those things. I've got to visit there with my girlfriend. Like, she had never been there before and never got to go to so many
That's
the
fun.
breweries and tap rooms, and I got to experience that with her. It's like, oh yeah, this is why I like this shit.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't have to be an Asheville specific thing, but like if you're drinking beer, just appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's my shout out.
Totally.
Also, Mandalorian season 3 just came out today. I'm gonna watch that tonight.
Nerds.
Yeah,
So
we're excited.
That's it.
So what I have to ask, besides New Belgium, obviously, what was your favorite brewery to visit?
The only new place that I went was the Sierra Nevada spot in Mills River or whatever.
So beautiful.
It's so pretty.
The landscaping.
The place that I didn't get to go on this last visit, but the place I went to prior to that, so within the last 6 months or so, was Cellarist in West Asheville. Small spot. Great, lagering program, a lot of wood age stuff. Really, really good. On the spirit side, I finally made my way to. I'm blanking on the distillery name itself, but they have a cocktail bar attached to it, kind of near the Burial Wicked Weed, block of places. And it's Antidote cocktail bar.
Okay.
It was a really nice, cocktail spot. Would recommend. Also Imperial. Okay, I'm going to stop this now.
Shout out to the city of Asheville.
Yeah.
Shout out to the city
I'll be
of
there
Asheville.
twice next month. So
Asheville's grown up with craft beer too. Like, if we just think about how it used to be, like Green Man was like the place you'd go and get a good porter, and like now it's just freaking out of control down there.
Now it's all the
Everything.
juicy IPAs there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Brittney, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on a rainy Wednesday evening.
I did not melt.
That's
Not
good.
Not yet.
Not yet. I have to get home, so we'll see. This might be the last.
Couple more of these fruit forces, and I might melt.
Yeah, I'm
That's all I'm
gonna
saying.
take this other one home and watch The Mandalorian season 3. Thanks,
There you go.
Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.